What's up, beer seekers? We are back with another installment of our Industry Insiders video interview series. And this is a special one for us tonight because we are officially going international. We're excited to be joined by Garrett and Andy of Rolling Hops Beer Tours out of Toronto, Ontario. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to chat tonight.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, guys. Excited to be here.
Cool. So we met Andy a couple weeks ago and got like a brief intro to Rolling Hops and like what you guys do. But can you guys just kind of dive a little bit more into the backstory, how you got your start, and just we'll go from there.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'll talk about a little bit how we got started, and I think I'll toss it over to Andy on a little bit more about what we do. We got started about, I guess it's almost 2 years ago now, November 2018. And it really just kind of came to fruition when both of our passions seemed to ignite, and we figured we could share it with more than just us. So for the most part, my biggest passion, or at least one that mine's shown through a little more, is craft beer. Andy obviously loves craft beer as well, but I think I was more the beer nerd out of both of us. Something I dove into a little bit more, and when I get into something, I kind of go down a rabbit hole a bit and want to learn everything about it. So it turned into, from just drinking a few craft beers, turned into visiting a lot of different breweries, learning about how they make the beer, what makes it different from, the bigger beer brands, what different styles I can experience. And from that point on, I just learned a lot about it. Andy would come with me, on the weekends. We'd go to visit a different craft brewery every so often, learn about it, try different styles, and almost take sort of an afternoon and visit a few craft breweries. And along the way, Andy being sort of our history buff, and he has a lot of background on that, we talk about different areas of Toronto as we went, and our interesting points about them that we both enjoyed. So, time after time, it would just be like us and maybe some friends and my wife, and 7 or 8 times my wife rolling her eyes later, we're like, oh, maybe someone else would be interested in what we have to spew about interesting history facts and craft beer knowledge. So we decided to put Rolling Hops beer tours together for our historical craft walking tours, and that's sort of kind of how it came to fruition.
Yeah, not much to add with that. That's pretty much it. Kind of, Garrett and I, we go back. We're old university buddies, so we've known each other over a decade now. Just kind of, again, both beer fans. Garrett being far more of a fanatic, or if I can say, a nerd, for beer, but obviously I had an interest in it as well. So Garrett and I, like Boston, like New York City, like so many cities in the U.S., Toronto has a thriving craft beer scene with breweries popping up all over the city. So it's not something that's just particular to us. I mean, it's a pretty trendy, cool thing to do for a 20-something Torontonian to go explore, find a new craft brewery somewhere in the city. So Garrett and I, we have a passion for sort of getting off the beaten track and the classic staple tourist things to do in Toronto, like there is in Boston, of course, but we wanted to give sort of an authentic sort of experience that really Torontonians like to partake in, and that really, a lot of that has to do with these cool craft breweries that are popping up all over the city.
So just to get more of an idea of like how the tours themselves go, I mean, are you highlighting like the breweries you're at, and then Andy, you come in with some fun facts about the neighborhood, or how do you guys kind of make that work together? Because that's a super interesting, I've been on individual brewery tours, that sort of thing, but yours sound like a little bit more than that. Obviously you're not the brewery itself, so you're not like diving into the back of the brewery to see how it all goes, but you guys are kind of showing the local scene a little bit more. So how did those kind of go? I find that interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to that point, we actually do go into the breweries, and for the most part, as long as they're willing to have us go back into the the tanks and the system and everything that where they brew, we do that as well. So given that, I think to answer your question more so, the biggest point of how we can showcase all of that in such a wholesome look is that we're walking beer tour. You know, there's a lot of different tours that take you on a bus or maybe take you on public transit or something of that nature. But since we're a walking beer tour, we get to experience, you know, every aspect of the tour every aspect of the neighborhood for that matter that we're walking through. So, you know, we'll kick it off at a certain point, talk a little bit about the area that we're starting in, whether it be at a brewery or a common location. As we're walking through the neighborhood to the first brewery stop, that's kind of where we point out certain things and we stop at certain areas and say, hey, you know, that's where this happened. And this is kind of where the neighborhood has evolved from. And you can see that here. So you're really in the thick of it in terms of getting that history aspect. And that's kind of where Andy shines brightest, because he's right in the middle of it all, and you can, you know, Andy's phenomenal. I can't even explain how he does it on the tour, but he's phenomenal at explaining how everything sort of is interchanged and meshed together all nicely. And then as we do that, you know, okay, great, we move on to the next brewery stop, and then we're in the brewery, we're talking about the brewery itself. The history comes into play again because we talk about the brewery history, you know, their inspirations for brewing, what got them started, the styles that they brew. And we're very thankful because a lot of the breweries we work with are wonderful partners. They allow us to jump in the back, show them the tanks. I guess this is where I take the reins maybe a little bit more and talk about how craft beer is made, what makes craft beer different from normal, let's say, macro beer or the bigger brands, and really highlight each individual brewery for what makes them special. And I guess it's sort of a rinse and repeat for about 3 more stops for different breweries. And thankfully, they're all in a nice close proximity. So we could walk through a very vast range without it seeming like we're walking, you know, 20, 30 minutes at a time. They're only about 15, 20 minutes between each stop. And we get to experience the vast nature of the neighborhood and then the breweries within them. So that's kind of a little bit of the structure.
Very cool.
So do you guys think, as hopefully more breweries come into Toronto, that you'll either expand your tour or start doing different tours? And then right now, do you do the exact same one? Do you hit up the same breweries every time? Do you have different ones already?
Yeah, so we currently have 3 separate tours. So they're in different neighborhoods of the city. So Toronto, it's kind of New York City-esque, where it's a grid system, not as organized. It's not like numbered, so it's not quite the same. But,
Boston's not organized at all. So
yeah, well, Boston, Boston's older, so it's a little bit more of a spider's web, I think.
Yeah.
Good description.
But that's kind of cool. That kind of gives it more of a charm than the boring grid system. But anyways, so we there's a main north-south street in Toronto. It's called Yonge Street, and everything east of Yonge Street is the east end, and everything west is the west end. So we have one tour that's on the east side in a neighborhood called Leslieville, and then we have two tours on the west side, one in a neighborhood called The Junction, and then one in a neighborhood. It's not in one specific neighborhood. It crosses some borders. It's kind of in a few different neighborhoods. One of them, it's actually pretty close to The Junction. This area, this kind of.
You did a recent video you released on The Junction, correct?
Steve, you did your homework, I see. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we can get more into this, but in 2020, in COVID times, we've pivoted quite a bit to doing a lot of vlogs or little travel videos, but very local. Some being located in Toronto, and then in the medium-sized cities in the province of Ontario, near Toronto. So yes, so if you guys are keen to check out YouTube Rolling Hops, we have a video showcasing quite a few craft breweries that exist in the neighborhood called The Junction. So it's one of our favorites. Garrett and I we adore The Junction. We think it's kind of the coolest neighborhoods in Toronto. And like, if you came to Toronto, it's not a place that would be on like the must-see lists. It's still a little bit up and coming, but it's awesome. Certainly if you're a beer fan like we are.
Yeah, what I love about what you guys do, it really sounds like, whether you're from Toronto or visiting, as long as you're a beer lover, your tour sounds like something we should get involved in.
For sure. You get sort of, kind of what Andy said, it's off the beaten path. When people coming to Toronto, Mind you, if the craft beer lovers, there's some like notable Toronto breweries. And you can hear a steam whistle in like Amsterdam. Those are the big ones sort of in the downtown core, that's sort of touristy destinations. And they're great. And they're great breweries, don't get me wrong. But we try and do something that's a little, like Andy said, off the beaten path. Just find out what other craft beer is going on. So the small underdog, unsung heroes of craft beer is what we sort of focus our actions on. And that's why we go to the neighborhoods outside the downtown core, outside sort of that touristy aspect of it all. And they're popping up all the time. I guess kind of like what you mentioned before. As they grow, we're definitely going to try and expand a little bit if we can. The craft beer industry is absolutely exploding in Toronto, and it's almost sometimes tough to cover it all. But yeah, everything we cover is what we think anyways a craft beer lover would like to experience when they come to a new city.
Yeah,
it's definitely exploding everywhere, and you kind of touched on it there, but what do you guys have planned for the future? Do you have any goals for Rolling Hops? Anything in the immediate future? Obviously, like post-COVID is the goal, but what's the future look like?
That's a good question. I think we've obviously started out in with our walking tours, which is our sort of our mainstay, and as Andy mentioned previously, we sort of pivoted to a little bit, and we're doing the virtual tours now, which we're hoping as we keep it sort of a mainstay offering, because as a walking tour, it's a little harder to work in the winter, Canadian winters, as I'm sure Boston winters and New York winters are not
walking tours.
Not the greatest for walking. Exactly. So, mind you, we've had a couple people come on a winter walking beer tour. As long as Canadians, I guess, strap your toque on and get going. It's fine. But yeah, I think we're gonna offer virtual tours consistently. We're looking to hopefully hit some corporate team building events we've had a little bit of success with, and I think it's a nice offering now that a lot of people may not be going to the office still, or however that looks in 6 to 12 months, whatever the case is. We'll keep that going. But I'm sure Andy feels the same. We love going out there and getting people out there in the city, walking tours, and actually meeting people face to face. I think Andy and I both thrive off of meeting new people and having those interactions and being able to socialize. So definitely continue the historical walking tours. We're going to keep up the virtual tours. We just actually recently added a beer and cheese offering as part of our sort of series of virtual tours. So we're doing that now. And then, I guess whatever else comes up, but I think those are probably our top three to kind of keep the ball going.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, it's, as you guys probably know, it's once you get the ball rolling with ideas, like ideas aren't the difficult part. Like ideas are kind of cheap. It's the actually like rolling up your socks and like doing the administration and actually doing all the work to put an idea to make it reality. So yeah, Garrett and I, we have lots of ideas on how to potentially kind of take this nice little company we have going, and it's kind of fun because, like I said, we're kind of piggybacking a little bit on this growing industry that's continuing to grow, and with there seems to be just many different avenues that one can take with the enterprise that is beer.
Yeah, and if you're creating really good content on the side, like you guys are doing with the virtual stuff now, I feel like COVID has kind of opened up people's eyes to the amount of things, and we already knew it, I feel like, but the amount of things that you can do virtually, and sometimes it's more convenient to do it virtually. It's a good thing to be putting out there. When we started, we had no intentions of doing this. Like, we never thought of this until we were like, yeah, we have no choice. Like, if we don't do this, then we're kind of just gonna like not do it. But so that's where this came from, and I feel like this, it's these virtual things are something you can keep rolling with as something that'll hopefully be even more popular moving forward. So it's interesting.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
I did not mean to do that.
I'm surprised how many times we use rolling in our dialogue.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, here they go again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
So Garrett, you had just mentioned you guys started a beer and cheese thing, and I actually wanted to use that sort of as a pivot. So I'm drinking a beer right now from Exhibit A Brewing. It's in Framingham, Massachusetts, out by where I live. And they recently did their own virtual beer tasting. So is your beer and cheese night kind of like that? And how does the virtual beer tours work? Are you getting more people outside of Toronto doing it? Because it sounds like something, if I'm going to go visit Toronto, something I'd want to do.
Yeah, for sure. So as of right now, we're simply offering the beer and cheese aspect as a virtual offering, simply because we don't necessarily have a brick and mortar place.
Right.
Just kind of the essence of our structure. We utilize other breweries and go from spot to spot and take care, use their resources for the most part. So with the beer and cheese offering that we have, we work with guests and organizers to send out cheese and beer at the same way we do a virtual tour. So you get a box. It's got 4 different curated selections of beer, craft beer, hand selected by us, and everyone gets to enjoy it. And you get some of the knickknacks like a coaster and craft beer tasting sheet. So the beer and cheese is very similar. We just kind of tweaked the tour a little bit to focus more on the pairing as opposed to just the beer and the beer history. So we add in the pairings themselves. I also, another thing I've kind of nerded out on is like, I love cheese, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, it goes great with beer. Guess what, Andy? We're making an offering. So I jumped into that kind of head first, and we started researching cheese and pairings and different how cheeses work with different beers and things like that. So we partnered with Grande Cheese here in Toronto, a great little, I don't even say little, but a nice local cheese shop, and got some great pairings together. And we've been doing that a little bit. So yeah, you get cheese along with your beer. Right now we're kind of trying to limit it a little bit to the GTA, because shipping cheese and in a post package isn't always the greatest. So anyway, I try to hand deliver that as much as possible. And then you get usually 4 selections of cheese to go with 4 selections of beer, and we talk about the pairing of each, the styles of each, how why beer and cheese is a great pairing, how they work together, how cheese is made, how beer is made. Pretty much the simple aspect of how we do craft beer, A to Z in craft beer, we do A to Z in craft beer and cheese pairing. So that's a little bit of how it's done. Eventually, I would like to partner with one of our breweries to maybe host a craft beer and cheese event at maybe one of their locations. Just so we don't have to rent a hall or anything. Mind you, when pandemic ideally calms down a little bit or goes away entirely, it'll be a little bit more feasible. But we're trying to hopefully it's virtual right now, hopefully do it in person later on. But if you're coming to Toronto, I'd definitely recommend our walking tour first and foremost, as long as it's safe to do so. And then the beer and cheese is something I'm excited to offer a little more and more.
Nice.
Very cool.
I will say it is logistically a little tricky. We have had quite a few emails from individuals actually in the US asking if we could do a virtual tour with them in several different states, kind of all over. And we would love to. It's just we don't really have relationships with breweries in Mobile, Alabama, or where have you. I just picked that randomly.
I think we had an inquiry from Alabama, actually.
Yeah, from somewhere, maybe Birmingham or something. But yeah, so it gets a little bit difficult just logistically. So we would love to establish partnerships with breweries all over North America and potentially issue these tours all over. It's just we're still a little bit small, so we're still pretty Toronto based.
Still plugging away. We get that.
Still plugging away.
And if liquor laws between countries could relax a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the laws in general have loosened up because they had to like keep people afloat in this in the last few months. So maybe we're headed down the right path. But
hopefully.
As far as being Toronto based, you guys are local experts. Do you have you mentioned Junction seems to be your favorite area of the city as far as doing these tours and maybe in general, but do you have what are some of like the key breweries in the Toronto area? We always talk about You know, so you have all your local breweries in the Boston area, and then there are some that like really stand out, and they've spread their wings beyond New England and distribute far and wide in some cases. And then you have the local ones, which, you know, are awesome. Like those are the ones that the people in town really, you know and love, but you may not come here and know that. What are some of the, like those key kind of bigger blossoming breweries in Toronto that you guys are familiar with?
Sure. Go ahead, Andy. I think you got a good take on this one. This is your bread and butter.
No, it's not. No.
I know I hate this question because I can't answer it.
Oh no.
Yeah. No. Yes, I always say Garrett is very annoying when you ask him questions about like what's your favorite or something, because Garrett doesn't have any favorites. He loves everything. So.
That's great.
Which is fine, but yeah,
it's a diplomatic answer, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we have an affinity, obviously, to we love the Junction neighborhood, but we also love the East End neighborhood that we go to as well, called Leslieville. It's kind of, both neighborhoods are very similar in that they're kind of post-working class industrial areas that are gentrifying quite quickly, and all these little factories or mechanics or warehouses, what have you, are now being converted into perhaps lofts or and there's a big example in the Junction, actually. This big old factory was converted into corporate office space for Ubisoft, the big video game video game creator. So stuff like that. It's kind of, I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure there are neighborhoods in Greater Boston that can relate. It's kind of like Brooklyn-esque, if I can compare it to New York City. But yeah, so both neighborhoods very thriving. They're kind of the East End, West End meccas for craft beer. So if I had to pick a brewery, maybe I'll pick one in the Junction and one in Leslieville. The Junction maybe would be Junction Craft Brewing, is its name. So it's this beautiful, if you look it up, Garrett and I we salivate over the actual location of the building. It's in this beautiful old Art Deco 1930s garbage incinerator. So it's this big brick building that has been completely converted. So if you Google, the incinerator in Toronto before and after pictures, or Junction Craft Brewery before and after pictures, it's night and day. So it's just, actually in the 1930s, the building was actually quite beautiful. Then like in the 1980s and 90s, it just looked like apocalyptic, desolate brick destruction. And then now it's fantastic. It's beautiful. The restoration has been amazing. So, and the beer is fantastic. Garrett and I have a wonderful relationship with the team at Junction Craft Brewing. They're fantastic. Can't say nothing but wonderful things to say about them. And then so that's our West End. That's my West End pick. And then East End maybe would be a brewery called Black Lab. It's a very new brewery. It actually opened the same week that we started as our tours in November 2018. So Black Lab, it's a nice little smallish brewery. Just the ambiance is fantastic as well. It's named after the owner's Black Lab, Snoopy. It's a very dog-friendly brewery. There's on Saturdays and Sundays. It's quite the place to be. It's super packed, and there's kids are allowed, of course, and it's just.
Try talking again.
I think did it cut out there, Garrett? I'll pass it on to you.
Cut out a little bit. That's okay.
All right.
You're back though.
I was gonna say, I just looked up the pictures of the before and after, and it's absolutely amazing what they turned that into. That is phenomenal.
For Junction?
It's really cool.
Yeah, for Junction.
Yeah,
did you look them up on your computer, Nick?
No, I did on my phone.
I was going to say, share your screen real quick so we can show the audience. That's fine. I can do it on there.
No, it's a beautiful place. And it's, like to Andy's point, like when I try to answer this question, I don't think I have a favorite, but it's always nice to outline certain breweries for what they do. So for instance, also in our Junction brewery tour, there's a little brewery, fairly new, called People's Pint Brewing. And they're fairly small. They have a small brew house, and they kind of took over the old spot that Junction used to be in way back in the day. And by way back in the day, I think it was like 2016, so not that long ago.
4 years ago.
But they're great, super really nice people, and like the brewery spot is, you know, nothing I guess compared to some of the lavish craft breweries that you might see and now in the day. They have like a little sort of industrial spot, but the beer is on point. It's absolutely wonderful. Every beer they brew is phenomenal. I haven't had a bad brew there yet. They actually did a really nice session IPA called Little Sipper. And I'm not usually a fan of session IPAs simply because if I'm drinking an IPA, I like a 6%. But
I'm with you.
But it's a tough beer to brew, you know, when you're trying to do a session IPA, because you're balancing something that is packed full of flavor, but at the same time, you know, still a little lower in the ABV, and they knocked it out of the park along with all the other beers. So People's Pint Brewing on the west side of Toronto has probably one that I'd say is a little more underrated, if I'm going to put it in a category, and they definitely should be checked out. On the east side, I think my personal fave is probably Rorschach Brewing, and he's nodding because he knows exactly what I was going to say. But Rorschach is wonderful. Usually at least 16 or more beers on tap, something that's crazy wild, at least in 4 or 5 beers of that spectrum. They do a lot of crazy things with fruit beers, sour beers, IPAs, double IPAs. They do stouts. They do imperial stout. They do pretty much everything you can ever ask for in a beer. And I like the whole aspect of it. Rorschach, and like a testament to the Rorschach test, it's all really subjective, like what people understand in beer. They brew it because that's what they want to brew, and they think people enjoy it, and you interpret it and enjoy it in any way and fashion that you enjoy. So I think it's a really sort of I think they're fairly popular in Toronto. If not, there's a little bit of a hidden gem, but that's kind of one of my favorite places to go, at least more in the unsung category, let's say.
Yeah, cool. Well, and
so I will say, get those People's Pints in the Junction, and Rorschach is in Leslieville. So they're both. You picked it.
Totally different spots.
You got
sorry, Steve, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No worries. I was gonna say, I think there's only one, you know, and obviously we haven't ventured into Toronto, well, physically with this at all, but even so, this is kind of our first virtual trip into Toronto. The only, you know, there's one brewery I can think of off the top of my head. Collective Arts, I believe, is in Hamilton, not quite Toronto. Is that one of the bigger ones up there? Are there other big? I mean, they distribute to Boston, so I assume they've got something going on. But yeah, what are some of those like bigger craft breweries, the ones that have like really made it at this point?
Collective Arts is definitely a big one. Hits home for me. I'm born and raised in Hamilton. Only moved to Toronto for schooling. I've been in Toronto here for like 10 or so years now. But yeah, Collective Arts is huge, and they're actually opening up a spot in Toronto, sort of like a satellite brewing operation. And rest in peace, the Six Brewing unfortunately went out of business, but Collective Arts is now moving into their spot. So a really good brewery, and Collective Arts, can't say enough good things about them. All their beers on point. Very high quality, high standards of quality in terms of how they brew. But yeah, they're some of the bigger ones for sure. Other big ones that I don't think will necessarily ship internationally, mainly because I think they focus more at home. But at least in the GTA area, you might hear like Great Lakes Brewing. They're a big one. Junction is actually pretty big as well. Junction Craft Brewing is fairly large, and they've been around for a long time and have a large operation. Anything bigger than that, you're getting to like, Andy and I always have this argument of what becomes craft beer after a while. Right. But like Steam Whistle is like, you know, independent still, because, you know, they're not owned by a macro, or like, you know, Moosehead is kind of falls in that same category. But other craft breweries that are as big and may have sort of a wide wingspan in terms of how they distribute. Collective Arts, I think, has been very ambitious in terms of trying to go internationally. We talk with them, you know, sporadically in how they expand a little bit, but I don't know if there's too many other ones that will really expand too much. Maybe like Bellwoods Brewing probably has their reaches south of the border, but apart from that, a lot of them are still kind of locally sourced, not mom pop shops for that matter, but still a little bit smaller in size.
Right.
Yeah, Steve, Collective Arts is kind of it's like the mega craft brewery, kind of
That's
maybe,
the one I should know.
yeah, maybe in like Canada even, and even like Garrett mentioned, their main breweries in like Hamilton's Canada's steel town. It's kind of like Canada's Pittsburgh, maybe, if I can compare it to the US.
Yeah.
Comparison.
Like so it's actually Collective Arts is right kind of beside the steel mills, so it's taken advantage again of the being in this industrial area that has the capacity to support a brewery of its size, and it's expanding, like Garrett said. So there's going to be a satellite, like a cool kind of chic version in Toronto, and they're creating one in Brooklyn, New York as well. So they're actually going to have a brick and mortar in the U.S.
Wow.
So they're expanding a lot, and
they also have like gyms and cocktails and
I can't
parties. Crazy.
I can't think of another craft brewery that we have here that's so creative and bullish to be that expansive, if I dare say.
Yeah, they're the biggest probably.
Mm-hmm. It's like, well, could I ask you, like, I know you guys have, like, in Boston or Greater Boston, like, what would be an equivalent? Like, you have like Trillium. Is that's in Boston? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a bigger craft brewery. Am I?
No, it is. I think the two biggest ones in Boston that you guys might know are Sam Adams and Harpoon.
Well, yeah, of course.
I was gonna say, I think Sam's sounds like similar to like
Collective.
Yeah, geez.
Sorry.
Sounds
Sam
similar.
Adams, yeah, we certainly.
Yeah.
Is that Greater Boston, Popper? That's where it's brewed?
It's in Boston. It's actually so I think technically their headquarters is in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're big. The biggest brewing operation they have is in Pennsylvania. So Harpoon is technically the biggest brewer in Boston because they have one here and one in Vermont. Yeah. But Sam Adams was founded in Boston.
And they have obviously a brewery and tap room in Boston, and it's actually one of not that many that are actually in the city of Boston. You know, you have to go. And Boston's not big, Andy. I think we've talked about this before. How Boston itself is a pretty small city. I mean, especially compared to Toronto or New York. It's Greater Boston is made up of a lot of towns. And you have your little neighborhoods within Boston as well, but you wouldn't be able to like you guys can go to the little neighborhoods of Toronto and hit a few breweries. It's like you can go to the actual city of Boston and hit a few breweries, and then you go outside to Cambridge, Somerville, Everett. Like that's where you'll really all up and down Massachusetts. There's so many little like pockets of them, but they're not necessarily like right here in Boston. So it's a bit different, I think, the layout here versus there.
I think say like sorry, Andy. Just like we mentioned the Sams, we mentioned the Harpoon, and you said Trillium, like Trillium, Lord Hobo, even like those are the ones that are starting to like set up their own satellite places that you were just mentioning. Like the Sams and the Harpoon have expanded way outside, and Sam's is now basically like at least borderline, if not entirely global. The Lord Hobos now like distribute to, last we checked, it was 15 states in the United States, and have several satellite campuses set up. And then same with Trillium, they have different setups along throughout Boston and then other places as well. But I would say that those are probably the closest comparisons.
Really cool.
Yeah, I'm absolutely dying to do an international craft beer road trip. This whole pandemic has thrown such a wrench.
I'll tell you what,
dying to get down there.
If you need road trip buddies, we will gladly join you guys.
Yeah, well, I know, guys. We were talking, like, we're doing our little Ontario craft brewery series, and it's a ton of fun. But like we're maybe halfway done the cities, and once we run out, we would love to go just south of the border. There's just so many, even like cool Rust Belt like cities that we would love to hit, but we just that border is still very closed.
It's almost closer than going to like Manitoba or Quebec for that matter. So it's like, might as well go south.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like cities like Detroit, Buffalo, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, even like they're not that far.
Right.
Those would be even easier. I mean, Buffalo's obviously a quick shot. If you ever come to Boston, I mean, one of you guys shared a story the other day with us with our BeerSighted group that had like the top X amount of craft beer cities in the U.S. and Boston was on the list. Portland, Maine was on the list. Kind of I don't know how many people think of Portland, Maine as a spot like that, but it's not far from Boston at all. I mean,
and that's a suggestion too, for sure. Like if you guys were to get to Portland, Maine, you know, if you're on that East Coast and you're in Boston and you decide you want to take a day trip up to Portland, you will not be disappointed. That is easily one of the best, at least East Coast cities that you can find for craft brewing, for sure.
Really?
Yep.
I'm gonna get my fill of East Coast IPAs, 100%.
Oh yeah, you will not be disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a number of really great spots to hit in the New England area. So there you go. I think that's your first international trip when it can happen, and we'll happily tag along.
No, maybe we'll make a pledge. Yeah, how about we say that? Boston and New England will be our first.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Done for sure.
Love it.
Well, guys, before we let you get going, just can you tell everyone, you know, where they can find information on you guys if they want to sign up for some of these virtual events, you know, where to do that, and then just kind of like a self promo, you know, where to find more information on you guys.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There you go. We'll do a half and half. You can find us at rollinghoppsbeertours.com. If you wanted to like schedule any sort of virtual event for like a private group, things like that, just send us a message. We'll usually, I almost have a guarantee that I'll reply back in less than 24 hours. So if you have any questions, absolutely willing to answer them there. And we're all over social media, right, Andy?
Yeah. So you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're even on TikTok if you guys are so keen to go there. We have our YouTube series as well. So we're all over doing some fun local Southern Ontario beer craft brewery travel. So you can find Instagram's kind of our main vessel. We post there probably most frequently and we're most active there.
Perfect. Well,
also our newsletter.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I forgot.
But yeah, we have a newsletter if you're interested in anything craft beer. We usually, you know, we share a couple things about what we're doing, you know, craft beer in I guess for the most part, probably Ontario. But if you want to sign up for a newsletter, any page of our website, scroll to the bottom, put in your email there, and we're happy to send you some information. Usually do it monthly. We don't spam everyone like every 10 minutes. I think a lot of people do that. I feel like lately I've been getting spammed by a lot of people. I think I put my email in. But anyways, we keep it very simple, very, you know, cut to the point, some beer info. And we have some nice blog posts on our website about craft beer information as well.
Perfect, guys. Well, again, rollinghopsbeertours.com to learn more, and on social media at rollinghopsbeertours. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our other video content, like more Industry Insiders video interview series. Stay up to date with all of our content by visiting BeerSighted.com and follow us on social media as well. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. We really appreciate having you on and learning more about Rolling Hops Beer Tours and everything related to you guys. So thank you guys again for taking the time.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Cheers, guys.